The next thing we're going to look at is the index method. And I'm going to create a new program called index method demo. Make sure that this is .py so Visual Studio Code knows that this is a Python program. And we're going to make a list. Maybe I'll just say names is equal to and so we have a list of names here. So a collection of strings, a sequence of strings inside square braces is a list. And if I wanted to display one of them, if I said name at index 3, and I were to print that and run that. Oh, I have to make sure I spell it correctly. We'd see that we'd get Bjarne here, and it would show up. So that works just fine, and that is getting the index of an element in a list. Using the index method is a little different. Let's say that name to find is equal to that, Aaron. And then so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say result is equal to names dot index. And index is a method. That means it's a function that belongs to a type of object. So we put a dot here. And then we put the name of this function, which is index. And we're going to pass in this name to find. And then let's just print what we get from that. So here we're using the index function as opposed to doing indexing. So before we did indexing and it given a number, we found the object at that location in the list. Watch what happens when we do this. Name found at 2. So Aaron, which is what we passed in here, was found at index 2. So this goes the other way. When you do indexing with a square braces, what you're doing is you're giving it a number and finding what's at that number. And that was this. So here, given a number, we find a name. Here, given a name, we find a number. And we'll just make this a little better. We'll say name to find. And you can see name found at 3 is Bjarne. But Aaron was found at index 2. And I could probably do this. So this is this shows you that you can go forwards and backwards into your list. If you take a number, and we can also do this just directly as well. So you could just put the number directly in here if you knew what it was. Generally, you're going to find that you're going to be using variables. So you can either put the number or the string directly into the index or the function, or so that is, these can work directly, or we can put the values we want in variables and use the variables. Either way, the variables are interchangeable with the literal value. They do the same thing. And you're going to find that very often we tend to put things into variables and then use the variables simply because we're often doing this by getting input from the user. So for example, it might look more like this. So we're going to convert it into an integer, and then we're going to say input, please enter an index number. And then here you're going to be saying input, please enter a name. And so now we're getting the value from the user. And so if I, get an index number here, I put in, let's say 5, we get back Alice. And then if I put Susan, I get back 1. So that kind of illustrates where you're probably going to be doing this much more often. Either from some calculation or for some user input, you're going to get a number and you're going to pass that number to an index to get out the value at that location. Or you're going to ask for a name and you're going to get the index out of that. So this introduces a very useful aspect of this. So let me create a new program. I'm going to call this one parallel list, and you will see why in a second. And let's say that we have some names, and I'm just going to reuse this names list. And we have numbers. Just putting in 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, how many names do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 names. We need 2 more numbers. So let's say these are just extension numbers in Office. So we've got these 2 lists, and they're parallel because Rob's number is 1, 2, 3, 4. Susan's is 5, 6, 7, 8. Aaron's is 2, 3, 4, 5. Bjarne's is 3, 4, 5, 6. Bill is 4, 5, 6, 7. Alice is 5, 6, 7, 8. So these are parallel lists. Basically, the first element of the first list corresponds to the first element of the second list, and so on and so forth. Now, let's say that we wanted to create kind of a phone number lookup application. And so what we're going to do, so here we're going to, let me save this as make sure this is .py. If you don't see the colors showing up, it's because you didn't put .py and it doesn't know it's a Python program. So now we see the colors showing up. So now let's see, we'll create parallel lists. And then down here, let's say that what we want to do is get a name from the user, find corresponding number, and then display number to user. Well, the way we can do this with this parallel list concept is this. we will say, so we need the name. So we'll say name to look up equals, we'll do an input. Please enter a name. And maybe just we might print names just so that the user knows what the names are. And then find the corresponding number. So we're going to need first, this is actually in two parts. We're going to have to find the index of the name and then find the number in the numbers list that corresponds to the same index. Because these are parallel, if we find the index that the name is in here, we can find it, the other one, in here. So the way we might do, so let's run this first, see where we're at. Please enter a name. We see the name show up, and you know, if I put Susan, okay, it's not doing anything yet. That's fine. So let's see if we can find the index. So index of name is equal to we're going to take the names list dot index, and then what are we going to look up? We're going to say, hey, take the name that we got from the user and look it up in this names list, and then give me the index of that name, and then store it in this variable because we're going to need to use that later. And for now, let's just print index of name just to see what happens. So I'm going to run this, and let's put Aaron in here, and we printed out the index of name, so that's 2. 0 is Rob, 1 is Susan, 2 is Aaron. So yes, it's found the correct index. Well, how do we use that? Well, we can do this now, is we can say the number and I'm using pretty long variable names just to make it clear what's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, long variable names that are descriptive are a really good idea. It'll actually help you code faster because you'll have a better idea of where you are in the program. So the number corresponding to name will be numbers, the list, and we're going to use indexing with the square braces, and we're just past the index of the name. So if I take the index of the name in the first list, since these are parallel, then the index of name will, if I pass that to numbers, I will get the number that corresponds to that name. And just kind of, let's make this, just to emphasize that this is parallel, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to add some extra spaces. Python will ignore them, but this allows us to see that, yeah, in fact, you know, for every single name, the numbers line up. So when we put in Aaron, the name should be 2345 because that lines up. And because we're passing that same index that we got for the name with the index function to the numbers list with the square braces, that will pull out that correct number. And then down here, we can just say print the number is, and number corresponding to name. So when we run that, if I put, let's see what if I get, if I put in Aaron, I should get 2345. And point of fact, I get 2345. So this looks like it's working. Let's clean this up a little bit. I don't need this print statement anymore. And I can say the number 4 and name to look up, and then put is between them. And so now what we end up with is, let's see. So if I put Rob here, I get 1, 2, 3, 4. Run it again. Let's put in Alice. Check the end. Yep. Get 5, 6, 7, 8. And then let's put Bjarni. And we get 3, 4, 5, 6. So yes, we now have an example of using parallel lists. So you put in one thing and you can find the other. And that is the use of the index function and using indexing, which we saw at the very beginning. So index is we pass in a value and we get back a number. Indexing with the square braces, we pass in a number and we get back a value. Thank you very much.